So in this business, the common phrase is the thrill of the hunt. So that's true. That is certainly true, but there's many ways to hunt it down. I've been in houses where this stuff has been born, where you go into a house and you get to go into the attic, and the 3 or 4 generations have lived there. You could actually be talking to a lady, dealing with a woman downstairs that's never really been up in the attic or been to the far corners of the walls of the attic. So when you get up there, it's like an archaeological dig. I could start moving stuff that's close to the stairwell that was put there in 1940. But once you move that out of the way, there's something behind it that was put there in 1920. Where when you get to the rafters where the walls go like this, there's stuff in there from 1901 or 1890s that their great grandfather, a man that they never even met, put the stuff there, and they never even thought to go digging up there to see what it was. I've done this hundreds of times in New Jersey. I'm from Oakhurst, New Jersey, which is next to Long Branch, New Jersey, which was the Hollywood of the world back in the 1870s, 1880s. All New York theater people that made money on stage vacationed in New Jersey. So did the 7 presidents. We have a 7 presidents park. So it was the who's who in America came to the Jersey Shore. So in the 1880s, those houses, there's still stuff in the attics of those Victorian homes from that era. A buddy of mine got into an attic where he got stuff from Edwin Booth. Edwin Booth was John Wilkes Booth's brother, who was a stage actor. Edwin Booth was a stage actor in New York. His brother, John Wilkes, was a stage actor in Washington, D.C., and he shot the president. But anyway, Edwin Booth had a girlfriend, I forget her name and stuff, but he found a trunk with all the girlfriend who was in a theater, all her stuff, her hat, her dress, all this stuff. I mean, this has sat in an attic since the 1880s where 3 or 4 generations of people lived in this house and never thought to even look in those trunks. So
actually, she has an Edwin Booth thing.
Yeah, right. Brandy does. So the point is that finding this stuff, discovering stuff that's been stashed since 1910 or 1890s, that's when your heart starts beating, because you know that you're the person that's touching this stuff for the first time in 90 or 100 years. And that's when it's good.
And you get to recycle it back into America.
Yeah, I get to reissue it to society. And then there's a story. Some people walk in, gosh, where do you get all this stuff? A lot of people can't even tell them. And a lot of stuff I can't even tell you how I get it or where I get it. But there's certain things, if I was in that attic, or if that whole attic came into my booth, I could start telling people about the story, about that particular attic find, how, the lady was a sheet music writer or something. I've once gotten to an attic where the woman, she wrote songs. So there's sheet music up there that with her name on it, that was up there since 1910, since it was printed. They printed 1,000 of them. Here's 100 leftovers that never made it to market. They're up in her attic, and they were put there in 1910.
And someone like you.
And I discovered it. So now here comes these 1 to 200 pieces of sheet music with the exact same cover, but done by this one particular lady who lived in Long Branch, that's on the market.
Okay, so let's talk about, like, for example, when I found, I bought from a pie collector or something. Let's go back to that Frisbee story, just to make it short and sweet.
Yeah, so like for one day last year in 2014, I had the option. I was at a flea market, and the guy across from me had just bought a whole pie tin collection. Apparently, the woman was in her 90s and collected these for over the course of her lifetime. You wouldn't just find them all in one spot. But I did. I found them all in one spot. So this guy had 300 or 400 pie tins, and they were so much per, and how much of I buy 100, so he quotes me a price. Well, of course I want 100 of them because the deal seems right. And I got into the second 100. I ended up with 200 of them. So I had maybe probably 150 different brands. Some of them were doubled, but some of them were unique, and probably 150 different brands. To the tune of, as I was looking through them, other people were walking by, hey, did you find any Frisbees? And I go, no, I haven't yet. But then it reminded me that Frisbee was a pie company. And that's where the toy that we throw out in the park came from, tossing a pie tin. So a Frisbee pie tin is actually collectible because of its word association with a famous sport we play. So in the end...
people love learning about
They love it. I grabbed 2 Frisbee pie tins that day, along with 150 other brands, which are, there's Mrs. Parker, Mrs. Smith, all the Bungalow, all these different brands.
But talk about how that's how we continue to tell the young generation about how America and toys and everything from art. I mean, you're the history teacher of America. Can you say that?
Yeah, 100%.
Tell me that.
You know, when I was in school, I was kind of good in history, but I wasn't a good reader and all that stuff, so I wasn't good at homework. I didn't produce the grades I could have had I read. Since I've been in the antique business, I've learned more about American history than any high school teacher would have ever taught me. I know by looking at an iron or an ironing board or a washing machine. I know exactly how they washed clothes in 1910. I know what clothes washing looked like in the 1880s. I know what it looked like in 1950s. So I know how hard women worked over the years. Today, you know, there's career women, but back then, every woman had a sewing machine. Every child learned how to sew before electricity. They would sit in a cabin in the 1880s by candlelight and sew hand-stitched quilts and stuff like that. It was just a craft, and it was a way, that's what you taught the young ladies what to do. So then eventually they're seamstress and they're...
But let's go back into how you're the history teacher. Now
Right.
today...
Well, now today, I could tell people exactly how life was in the 1880s, even though I wasn't there. I'm as close as you're going to get to a time machine. I could tell you what it was like. So people will pick something up. What is this? Or how was this used? Or what was this ever used for? Those are the questions. And I can say, well, that was you put that by your fireplace, and that's how you poke the coals, or that's how you hung your pot to cook to boil your water for your coffee. You would hang your pot on that thing. It was a crane.
So you're the closest thing to a time machine.
I'm the closest thing you're going to get to a time machine.
Why?
We don't really have time machines, so you're going to have to come to me to find out how this stuff was used. And I'm certainly not an expert in it, but I've learned. And a lot of times I've learned from my customers, not just from my colleagues. My customers will come in. Hey, you know what this is? And they'll stump me. I go, hey, I don't know what it is. I've been trying to figure that out. I goes, oh, well, this is a cotton gin. This was, in fact, this is what Eli Whitney designed this to separate the seeds out of the cotton. I actually had one and didn't know what it was, so I had a little old man tell me, hey, how much is that cotton gin? I go, huh? Because that thing over there is a cotton gin. Yeah. Man, when he said that, my ears went like this and my eyes lit up. I was like, oh my God, I got a cotton gin. I had no idea what I had.
How exciting is that?
No, that was awesome. First of all, because I bought it for next to nothing. The guy who sold it to me thought it was the interior part of an organ. He goes, oh, that organ piece, you could have it for next to nothing. And I give him $25 for it. And then I know it was handmade and a cool tool. And I asked a few people, what do you think this is? Other antique dealers couldn't really tell me what it was. So I put a price on it. Let's say, I think I marked it $350 because I thought this was a really cool instrument. And I knew it was from the middle 1800s. And then when the little old man told me it was a cotton gin, and then I go, why, you want it? He goes, oh no, I got one just like it at home. So he was just wanted to know what I wanted for it so he could price his at home. As soon as he left, I took my $350 off and I put up $500. And then I took it to the Brimfield Antique Show. And I had another friend come along who knew nothing about it, but knew I was asking the wrong amount of money. He goes, Randy, that thing's much better than $500. He goes, put a 1 in front of the 5. So I did. I made it $1,500. Then I took it and I put it out at the Mays Antique Market. And I had a guy fondling it, looking at it, studying it, and asking, do you mind if I take a picture of this? I go, go ahead. So he takes the picture, and he goes, I got a buddy of mine collect stuff like this. I go, that's cool. The next day I got a call from his buddy, and he told me his name. Randy, my name is, and I forget. He goes, you don't know me, but you were at the Mays Market yesterday, and you had a cotton gin. Is it still for sale? I go, yes, it is, sir. He goes, can you shoot me a few better pictures of it? I'd like to get some better pictures. I'd like to buy it, maybe. So I said, would you like them emailed or text? He goes, you could email them to me. He gives me his email. I ran back to my booth and I took 15 pictures of it. But I made sure I got the price tag in there also, $1,500. So we understood that this thing's $1,500 value. And then I took a picture of all the damage, the parts that it was missing, all that stuff. And I called the guy back and he says, well, listen. No, he called me back. He says, listen, if you give me a little dealer consideration on that, I'd buy it. I go, well, how about $1,250? He goes, I'll buy it. So he bought it for $1,250. This is an item they paid $25 for. I started out asking $350. I wanted $500, then $1,500, and I settled at $1,250. And sometimes stuff just works that way. It moves up. It moves up the river in my own possession. An antique changes hands 5 times or 6 times from where it's found to the end user. In this case, I cut out number 2, 3, and 4. But just by the help of my friends and my customers, by telling me, I could have sold it for $350 to somebody who then would have went and asked $1,500. but we skipped that person while it was in my possession. And it rarely happens, but it happened that time.
Talk about that. Like, this business is hard. You know, just gas alone driving place to place. So don't think everything is a $25 sale that I sell for that much money.
Right. So now, the fact that I pay $25 and get $1,200, that sounds wonderful. Gee, there's so much money in antiques. There's not really. I spend a lot of money on gasoline, lodging, eating. I mean, I travel. I'm a traveling antique store.
And you buy the stuff.
Plus, I buy it. But whereas some people have a brick and mortar store and they pay for $1,200 a month rent, I don't. I pay $1,200 a month in getting this stuff to market because I like to do outdoor markets where they charge me rent. Some shows are $350 for the weekend. Some shows are $800 for the weekend. So I pay rent to set up there. I have to get it there. So there's a whole phrase where we find it, we dust it, we clean it, we polish it, we pack it, we ship it, we drive it, we set it up, then we break it down, and all that. All that stuff goes into this product. So a lot of times paying 10 and selling for 20 doesn't make you money. It sounds profitable, but that would be only if some lady dropped it off on my doorstep for $10 and then I sold it for my doorstep for $20. Yes, then you're making money. But not when I have to handle it. Put it in my truck, take it to market, cross the country, sometimes 800 miles, sometimes 1,200 miles away from home, unload it, pay for a tent company to protect my merchandise, sit there for a weekend on someone else's land where I paid them rent. All these costs, once they're now buying for 10, selling for 20, you made nothing. You got to buy for 10 and sell for 40.
But people don't realize that.
They don't realize it. So then if they hear that you bought for 10 and sold for 40, they think you robbed somebody. You didn't. You got it for 10 from someone who didn't need it, was about to throw it out. And you sold it for 40 to a decorator who knows exactly how to use it properly and actually make money beyond what you just charged them.
And talk about how that's key. So talk to the audience who's going to come here and try to buy from you. Talk to them and say that, so taking these things into account when you walk in a vendor's booth. Tell me about that.
So just keep in mind, I know the pricing system. I know what this stuff. I know how much you could buy it for out there if you look real hard, and I know how much you could get for it if you have the right clientele. So I know all the numbers in between. So if I know the lady could get $100 for it, and I tell her it's $50, I'm leaving her.
Okay, let's just talk straight to the